America and the world gather for a celebration. Coming to this country's golden shores, to New York Harbor, to honor one of liberty's proudest symbols, the Statue of Liberty.
Tonight it begins as ABC presents Liberty Weekend. Dark for the past 2 years, the Ladies' Torch will be relighted by the President, while in cities and towns around the nation, 20,000 new American citizens will be sworn in. Then the entertainment begins. Frank Sinatra, Shirley MacLaine, Neil Diamond, Gregory Peck, Elizabeth Taylor, Debbie Allen, MIKHAIL BARYSHNIKOV, and more as the salute to Lady Liberty starts with a gala opening ceremonies. Now from Governor's Island, Peter Jennings and Barbara Walters.
From Governor's Island, in fact, on the edge of this magnificent harbor, the upper bay of New York Harbor, with the ships from the International Fleet already here and waiting to pay tribute tomorrow to the Statue of Liberty. And just having arrived a few moments ago on the east side, the Brooklyn side of Governor's Channel, on the golf course for this Governor's Island Coast Guard Station, President and Mrs. Reagan, the President now receiving honors. As here in the very small, recently constructed stadium, people begin to gather for what we can assure you, having had a sneak look at the preview last night, a very exciting set of opening ceremonies as we here on the East Coast, hopefully for you all across the country, wear patriotism on our sleeve. Barbara, good evening.
Good evening. I think it's going to be a very exciting night. You will be moved, I think. You will be entertained. You will be touched. Most of all, I think we're all going to feel very, very proud. Don't you?
I think we are if we don't get blown away.
Yeah,
I must tell you, yesterday we were worried about the rain. There's something of a stiff gale blowing here this evening, which was very helpful to the tall ships as they're made their way down the East River today and then out to their berth where they're spending the night before they come up the harbor tomorrow. They tell us, Barbara, this will go down when the sun goes down, but I have my doubts.
Well, behind us is the stage, so they're going to be dancing and blowing, and it should be, as we said, interesting to watch.
And now that you mention the stage, let us give you some specific idea of exactly where we are. As Barbara said, there is the stage on which at the moment the U.S. Navy Band is playing for the crowd assembling. And it is there, of course, where the opening ceremonies will take place this evening. Just about 1,700 yards across this upper bay from the stage, you can see her, the Statue of Liberty, about to be relit by President Reagan in a couple of stages in all of her new glory. And not too far from Liberty Island, just a short way across the bay, Ellis Island, the old island of tears through which so many millions of immigrants have passed on their way to life in the new world. And waiting there this evening, some 300 people, part of a group of 25,000 around the country, waiting to be sworn in as American citizens by Chief Justice Warren Burger, and that'll be part of the opening ceremonies. In effect, Ellis Island becomes a federal court just for tonight. And of course, there is the harbor without the tall ships now, but with the International Naval Armada already berthed and ready to settle down for the night and for the long Liberty Weekend. Pleasure ships from all over the place, warships from 23 nations, poised, as we said, to come under, there it is, the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, which divides the upper and lower bays, so named for the first European who set eyes on this, one of the world's great harbors.
Last night, there was a dress rehearsal, and the Coast Guard, who inhabit this island, had a free, wonderful show. Well, that's not the case tonight. It will be a wonderful show, but it sure isn't free. It's costing the people here tonight $10,000 for a pair of tickets. Some of the people who are coming are as famous as the people on stage. Pierre Salinger has been mingling with the rich and famous and brings us this report. Pierre?
To get on this boat tonight and head for Governor's Island, you need two important assets. Be rich or famous, and be willing to pay $5,000 for the right to join President Reagan and French President Mitterrand at the opening ceremony of Liberty Weekend. 12 minutes later, you've arrived, and a long red carpet is spread out to welcome you. Among the first arrivals were two of tonight's special honorees.
Good to see you. How does it feel to be here? Pretty nice. Pretty. This isn't one of my regular stops, you know.
I remember when I came up this harbor as an immigrant on the Ile de France, and quite an exciting experience.
From there, it was a brief, sunny walk to the party. Once there, an Air Force orchestra set the soft tone. The food was lavish: salmon, chicken, and roast beef. The bar is poised to serve everything from diet cola to fine wines. Lee Iacocca, the man who launched all this, was proud of the American contributions to make this weekend possible.
The American people came through at 277, probably going for 300 million, so in a short time, that's just spectacular, and the American public's generous.
New York Governor Mario Cuomo had deep reflections on his Italian past.
I think the more I reflect on it, the idea that we should be lucky enough to have had our parents come here and us be born here, I think it's very important that we keep the perspective on it. We're going to be rejoicing our good luck, and that's fine. But we ought to remember that not everybody shares it.
But maybe the most enthusiastic participant at the party was the former Israeli, now American concert violinist, ITZHAK PERLMAN.
My wife called me up and she says, guess what? They're giving this to you. And I said, what? You know, and eventually it became evident that it's probably the biggest honor I'll ever receive, you know. So.
What do you think of your... But in the end, whether you were rich or famous, you ended up having to go through a tough security test before you went to tonight's celebration. Wary police dogs watched them all walk in. $1,000 may seem like a lot of money for an evening's entertainment, but tonight is very special in America's history, and the people who are here will never forget this evening when they will see the reborn Statue of Liberty lit up again. Peter?
Thank you, Pierre. Pierre Salinger here on Governor's Island. As ITZHAK PERLMAN made an allusion to it, we'll tell you that part of the opening ceremonies this evening will be devoted to the presentation of the Liberty Medal by President Reagan to 12 naturalized Americans, and ITZHAK PERLMAN will indeed be one of them. There we look now down at the stage for the opening ceremonies. People gathering now very quickly with President Reagan on the island. We're not too far from the beginning of what surely is going to be one of the great entertainment, and certainly moving, and as Pierre Salinger suggested, historic shows. We are here to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Statue of Liberty. President MEESE will be coming along shortly, so will MIKHAIL BARYSHNIKOV and the others. We'll be back.
ABC's presentation of Liberty Weekend is brought to you by the Van Heusen Company, Avon in celebration of 100 years of beauty, Dodge, a performance revolution and an American revolution, and IBM.
The sun is just clinging to the horizon now, and there from high on the pylons of the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, which links Brooklyn with Staten Island in New York Harbor, the view of Lower Manhattan, Governor's Island, and a portion of the Armada, which has gathered all across this harbor and up and down the Hudson River to begin the celebrations of Liberty Weekend. We hope that in the next few days, you across the country, those of you more landlocked than we are at the moment, will feel as much affection towards this harbor and its place in American history as we have in the last few visits we've paid in preparation for this evening. Barbara?
As Pierre pointed out, Peter, there are a lot of celebrities here tonight watching the show and in the show. One of them is Gregory Peck. He will be the first host, and he will introduce President Mitterrand. I talked with him a few moments ago as he was getting ready. Mr. Peck, does the Statue of Liberty have special meaning to you?
It does. I think it's quite a typical story, but mine is about my grandmother, who was a bold young Irish girl from a poor farm in County Kerry in the south of Ireland. And she came over steerage in 1886, not long after the statue was first dedicated. And when I was a very small boy, I like to hear her tell that story of how they arrived in New York Harbor, and all the steerage passengers were allowed on the upper deck. And she told me how they cheered, cried, waved, danced, all the emotions. And I used to like to hear her tell that story when I was a kid. So there's that personal meaning for me, yeah.
That was your maternal grandmother?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Was your father also from Ireland?
No, he was born in Rochester, New York. And He liked to play a joke on gas station attendants. Now, I had the same name as my father, Gregory Peck, or he had the same name as I. So he'd fill up his car with gas and he'd hand over his card. Now, this when he was a white-haired gentleman, bushy black eyebrows, about 76, 77 years old. He'd hand them the card that said Gregory Peck. And they'd look inside the car and they'd say, "You're Gregory Peck?" He'd say, "Ah, yes, but you see, I've not been at all well lately." And he loved to do that. He was full of jokes. He was a real Irishman.
Mr. Peck, there's been some criticism that the ceremonies tonight might be too much glitz or too commercial and maybe not solemn enough for the occasion.
Well, glitzy, I don't know, but I'm certainly glad it's not going to be solemn. I don't think any of us are going to forget what that great lady means over there. And none of us forget the words of Emma Lazarus. But this is the American way. When we have political inventions, we wear crazy hats. When we have entertainment between the halves of a football game, we have girls dancing, we have sex appeal, we have clowning about, we have marching bands. We have a good time about it. So it's a significant day and a great day, the 100th anniversary of the great lady there. But we're going to have fun in our own American way, and a little hullabaloo and a little glitz and a little horn blowing doesn't do any harm, I don't think.
Well, we'll be looking forward to seeing you later, very shortly, as you introduce President Mitterrand. Good luck tonight.
Thank you, Papa.
Boy, Gregory Peck puts his fingers on so many things. There's nowhere else in the world, I suspect, where this kind of celebration, which has such deep and profound meaning, is going to have as much hoopla attached to it. Some call it glitz, some call it glitter. We certainly hope, whether you're at home or coming to the neighborhood, that it's going to be fun. Let's talk for a moment about that other famous island, Liberty Island, which used to be Bedloe's Island, where the statue now stands, is, of course, the absolute epicenter of this particular harbor. But over there, of course, is Ellis Island, through which 40% of Americans today had their ancestors come. What a connection to one small island, sometimes called the Tears, the Isle of Tears. The bulk of the Russian immigrants to this country came here between 1880 and 1920. And tonight, when approximately 300 people are sworn in publicly on television all across the country from Ellis Island, one clearly of the most visible will be a Russian dancer and choreographer named MIKHAIL BARYSHNIKOV. And later this evening, he'll dance for us. First, here's Stone Phillips.
An immigrant flees an oppressive government to find freedom in America, becomes a movie star, a darling of society, a manager, an entrepreneur. A turn-of-the-century tale? No, a success story of the 80s. The story of MIKHAIL BARYSHNIKOV. Born in Latvia in the Soviet Union in 1948, as a teenager, he entered Leningrad's famed Kirov Ballet Company and was instantly acclaimed when he made his first solo performance in 1962. In 1970, he began performing in the West. 4 years later, he made a momentous decision.
And I didn't plan my defection in 1974. It was just a necessity, an urge. And it was a one-day decision.
Defecting to the West in Toronto that day in 1974 was not, he maintains, a political act, but a search for artistic freedom. For Baryshnikov, ballet was only a launching pad. Dancing on film, the turning point, his screen debut in 1977 earned him an Oscar nomination. He greeted presidents and paid tribute to some of his American idols.
I have been invited to say something about how dancers feel about Fred Astaire. It's no secret, we hate him.
Media superstar, with television specials that were more showbiz than Swan Lake, and an acquired poise at handling the ever-present press. His latest film, White Nights, was a critical and box office success, showcasing Baryshnikov as one of show business's hottest properties. He's even branched out into hot properties of his own, part ownership in a restaurant on Manhattan's trendy Upper West Side.
I'm definitely American now. I'm pretty fast, I'm pretty cynical, but I love it.
But not too cynical. The ballet dancer who came here looking for artistic freedom 12 years ago is today artistic director of the American Ballet Theater. Well, here tonight on Ellis Island, as you can see, the speeches are just about to begin, and with the actual swearing-in ceremony just about an hour away, there's a tremendous feeling of anticipation here. As Peter said earlier, what's actually happening is that Ellis Island tonight becomes a federal court so that these immigrants can become full-fledged Americans, among them, of course, Baryshnikov. But he's really only one of 300 here on Ellis Island and one of several thousand across the country who will take the oath of citizenship tonight. This group includes 2 petitioners from every state and the District of Columbia and every U.S. territory. They were handpicked by their respective governors. And to look at them is to see an incredible mosaic of different cultural and religious backgrounds. Finally, what you're really going to see here tonight, amidst all of the hoopla and fanfare of Liberty Weekend, is a simple and solemn ceremony. Chief Justice Berger will take to the stage. He'll ask the petitioners to raise their right hands, renounce loyalty to any foreign government, and pledge their allegiance to the United States. And with that, their common aspirations of citizenship here will come true. One final note, Peter. Before they took their seats here, the petitioners were treated to an all-American snack. You can almost guess what was on the menu. It was Coca-Cola and a slice of apple pie.
Thanks very much, Stone. Simple, but certainly not private. As you know, that ceremony is going to be part of the opening ceremonies, and we must tell you that a couple of judges, one in Los Angeles and one in Washington, didn't want to participate today because they thought that all of the hoopla attached to the swearing in of new immigrants to become new citizens in the glare of publicity would just simply not make it a dignified occasion. But there is that picture there, Barbara, of that man sitting holding the Statue of Liberty in his lap. I don't think there could be anything more dignified than that.
And every time we look at that Statue of Liberty, there it is behind us. What a beautiful sight. We're going to come back and talk more about that and tell you more about what you're going to be seeing tonight. We will be back in just a moment.
As you will over the next 4 days from so many angles and so many different lights. There in the foreground of your picture, the Battery Park in Manhattan, among the hundreds of thousands of people who will come over Liberty Weekend. And they're one of the tour boats, hesitant at the moment because the U.S. Coast Guard has closed off the channel now between the Statue of Liberty and where we are on Governor's Island, as President Reagan and President Mitterrand of France are about to come and join the opening ceremony.
Ladies and gentlemen,
there is another lady who shares the history of the Statue of Liberty, although she certainly didn't know that that would happen. Her name is Emma Lazarus, and it's her words that are inscribed on a tablet inside of the Statue of Liberty. Sander Vanocur tells us more about this lady.
Her poem graces one of the world's most familiar symbols of freedom, the Statue of Liberty. It captures an era in our nation's history that few writers or poets have equaled. The words belong to Emma Lazarus. The voice is Charlton Heston.
Here at the sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles.
Emma Lazarus wrote that poem, The New Colossus, in 1883, 3 years before the statue's unveiling. She wrote it for a fundraising auction at New York's Academy of Music to help raise money for the statue's pedestal. The pedestal where her famous words now reside. The poem, by the way, sold for $1,500. She was born in New York in 1884 to a wealthy and prominent Jewish family. The daughter of a successful industrialist, she led an isolated life, a stranger to the hardships of the millions of immigrants that flooded through New York Harbor. I always will be loyal to my race, she once wrote, but I feel no religious fervor in my soul. It was the mass of Jewish refugees fleeing the pogroms of Russia that historians say swelled her consciousness as a Jew. She and her poetry were transformed. Her words spoke to the tens of millions of immigrants of every race and nationality that came to America with hopes of a better life.
Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door.
Emma Lazarus would never know the importance that her poem holds or the spirit that her words symbolize. Her poem was not placed at the base of the Statue of Liberty until almost 20 years after her death. But to this day, it still stands as a tribute to her and to the idea of liberty. The first light that Emma Lazarus's huddled masses saw was not the Statue of Liberty. It was a light similar to this one on a Coast Guard lightship, like this one, which is the Nantucket II, which was retired in 1984 after serving for many years on Nantucket shoals about 100 miles to the northeast of here. The lightship was the first glimmer of liberty they saw. The second was the Ambrose lightship off New York Harbor, and then they saw the Statue of Liberty. Those lamps are now gone, but the Statue of Liberty will be lit tonight. Barbara?
Thank you, Senator. A perfectly beautiful shot of a fireboat in New York Harbor, and later tonight you'll hear horns from all the boats as the lights go on and the President unveils the Statue of Liberty and lights its torch. He will also be presenting medals of liberty, and it's almost about to begin. The audience is quiet and expectant.
Almost as if, Barbara, I think they understand, as we certainly do, that people are here to celebrate an idea, not just an event. I was thinking just a little while ago about Auguste Bartholdi. He is the Frenchman who designed and sculpted the Statue of Liberty, and when he set out for the New World in 1871 to New York Harbor, he was looking for a place, that island as it turns out, on which to set his contribution to friendship between France and the United States and peace of admiration for the New World. Now, we know in this day and age, all of you across the country are not so kindly disposed to New York as we'd like you to be this evening. But remember what Auguste Bartholdi wrote in 1871. It is indeed the New World. And when I landed here, I knew it was the idea that my friends in Europe had told me about. We're looking forward to the opening ceremonies. We hope you'll stay with us. I'm Peter Jennings for Barbara Walters. We hope you have a good evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, to conduct the Liberty Orchestra in his composition, Liberty Fanfare, written especially for this occasion, Mr. John Williams. Ladies and gentlemen, from Governor's Island in New York Harbor to all the people of the world, welcome to the opening ceremonies of Liberty Weekend.
John Williams, the conductor of the Boston Pops, the conductor for this evening as this opening ceremonies begin here on the shores of New York Harbor.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the French Republic and Madame Francois Mitterrand.
President Mitterrand, elected as the President of France in 1981 for a 7-year term, who comes here to share the honors of the spotlight with President Reagan this Liberty weekend for many reasons. Because French-American history goes back to the Revolutionary War, French assistance, because it was France which gave the Statue of Liberty to this country 100 years ago tomorrow, and because President Mitterrand and President Reagan have business to discuss, which they will do tomorrow, after they have reviewed together the International Naval Armada. Ruffles and flourishes.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States and Mrs. Reagan.
The president who has done so much to give the United States the measure of spirit which it presently has about itself, and who tomorrow will come down the Hudson River on board the USS Iowa to review the ships of the 21 nations who've come here to pay tribute to the United States and to the Statue of Liberty. Going to the presidential box where, on a number of occasions this evening, he shall be the center of the spotlight. And here in what we might call Liberty Stadium for this evening, the crowd on its feet.
French Republic Band play the national anthem of the Republic of France.
The Marseillaise.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the national anthem of the United States of America, sung by a participant of the very special art program, Kenneth Mack, Jr.
Kenneth Mack Jr., a 13-year-old from East Nachita, Louisiana. The Very Special Arts Program is an international organization which provides art programs for the disabled. Last year, this child sang at both the White House and the Vatican. We'll be right back.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Gregory Peck.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. President, Mrs. Reagan, President Mitterrand, Madame Mitterrand, honored guests, and fellow Americans. This ceremony of rededication and restoration will hopefully have a profound effect on the collective conscience of people everywhere, for it underscores one of the deepest yearnings of all mankind, the right of all men to find individual freedom in a free society. In a world where time is measured in milliseconds, 100 years of longevity in any area is worthy of recognition. But this event, marking a century of real and symbolic friendship between our two nations, gives us even greater cause for celebration. Not only does it acknowledge our mutual love of traditional values, but in the larger sense, it represents a priceless gift, a gift of dreams made tangible and visible through a monument dedicated to freedom and liberty. This copper-clad colossus, standing in the harbor with upraised torch and crown of light, was for millions their first glimpse of America. For millions of others entering this promised land from other directions, the image of liberty enlightening the world was a vision they carried deep within their hearts. As with many other great visions, the Statue of Liberty could be said to have had its birth as the result of a death. In 1865, the assassination of President Lincoln shocked the world. In France, the gifted sculptor, Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi, felt compelled to express his countrymen's deep affection for America with a dramatic gesture. On his first visit here, Providence led him to an abandoned fort in New York Harbor called Bedloe's Island. It was the ideal site for the monumental statue he was planning. In this sketch, done at the time, he named her Liberty Enlightening the World. The lady's torch and radiant crown lighting the way for all who yearn to enter the land of freedom. Returning to France, he soon found the inspiration for the statue's face, his mother. It took 3 years, however, for Bartholdi to complete his design. Construction began in 1876, with funds donated entirely by the French people. Plaster molds of some 300 sections were made to Bartholdi's amazingly accurate specifications. Then copper sheeting was hammered into wooden forms. The entire statue would be comprised of a copper shell, a mere 3/32 of an inch thick. To encourage continued support for this long-term and expensive project, sections were then put on public display. Gustave Eiffel, the brilliant engineer who would soon build his famous tower, was called on to design the statue's iron framework. The virtually hollow structure rose 15 stories, weighed 225 tons, and was ingeniously engineered to withstand winds of 100 miles an hour. In 1884, after 8 years of dedicated effort and a cost of $250,000, the statue was finally completed in Paris. In New York, however, construction of its mammoth pedestal had not yet begun. Only its cornerstone had been set in place. When the statue arrived in New York a year later, packed in 200 crates, the base had not been finished. American donations for completing the work had run out. It was then that Joseph Pulitzer, the newspaper magnate and an immigrant himself, organized a campaign to raise the last $100,000. It would come in pennies, nickels, and dimes, much of it from children. But come it did, and the statue finally gained her foothold in the New World. On a rainy day in 1886, this remarkable gift from the people of France was officially presented to the people of the United States, and a new symbol of hope was given to the world. Now, to add even greater import to this historic celebration, I'm proud to introduce the President of the Republic of France, François Mitterrand.
President Mitterrand being played onto the stage here on the edge of New York Harbor by his own Garde Républicaine band, the band of the Garde République. President Mitterrand, of course, is going to have some fairly serious conversations while he's here with President Reagan. And then, perhaps by coincidence, will fly on Monday to Moscow, where he will see the General Secretary, Mikhail Gorbachev. It is not unlikely that he shall speak in French. He speaks some English.
Messager du peuple français. J'apporte
as a messenger from the French people,
américain,
I bring to the American people
le salut fraternel
the fraternal
de mon
greetings
pays, la France.
of my country, France.
Il y a 2 siècles,
2 centuries ago,
la France était à vos côtés pour
France
la
was at
conquête
your
de
side
votre indépendance.
when you won your independence.
Il y a 100 ans,
100 years ago,
des milliers et des milliers
thousands
d'enfants
upon
de
thousands
France
of the sons and daughters of France
offraient aux États-Unis d'Amérique
presented the United States of
cette
America
statue, la
with
statue
this
de la
Statue
liberté,
of Liberty,
symbole
today
aujourd'hui de
the
la
symbol
première
of the foremost
de nos valeurs communes.
of our common values.
À votre tour,
You,
vous êtes venus
in your
2
turn,
fois
came twice
au prix de votre sang
at the cost of your own blood
nous aider à
to help us
sauver et notre
to save
indépendance
our independence
et notre liberté.
and our freedom.
Telle est l'histoire
Such
qu'ensemble
is the
nous
history
avons faite,
we have made together,
telle est l'histoire
and such
qu'ensemble
is the history
nous allons faire.
we are going to make together.
Puissent les enfants de
May
nos
our
enfants
children's children
se retrouver
meet
pour
again
célébrer toujours ensemble dans 100 ans
another 100 years
et
from now
plus longtemps
and
encore,
long thereafter
la fête des
to celebrate
hommes libres
still together the
dans un
festival
monde
of
pacifique.
free people in a world of peace.
Il n'y aura pas de repos d'ici là.
In the meantime, there will be no respite for those who believe that life is not worth living unless the very air breathes forth for individuals and nations the simple right to live in freedom.
J'exprime au président et à
May
Madame
I convey to President Reagan and Mrs.
les
Reagan
sentiments qu'éprouve
the
à leur
feelings
égard
which the
la
French nation
française
has for
et la
them,
fierté
as
qui est
well
la
as the
mienne
pride which
en
I
cet
feel
instant,
at this time
porte-parole
as
d'une
spokesman
amitié plus forte
for a friendship
que les
which is
épreuves
stronger
du temps.
than the tests of time.
À vous enfin,
Finally,
Américains
to
qui
all you
m'entendez,
Americans who are listening to me,
je dis
I say
de toute
with
la
all
force
the strength
de mon esprit
of my heart
et de mon
and my
cœur.
mind,
Happy birthday, United States. Happy birthday, Miss Liberty.
As we said, President Mitterrand speaks a little English, but it is as much as anything a political statement. No matter how kindly disposed French presidents are to America, in their own homeland, it is considered de rigueur, as the French say, to speak French, not English. We'll be right back.
Today's exclusive coverage of Liberty Weekend will continue.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kenny Rogers.
Thank you. The United States and France have had a special relationship that dates back to our Revolutionary War. What American child hasn't heard of General Lafayette and the role he played in helping our country obtain its freedom? And what French child hasn't been made aware of the American soldiers who fought and died in the soil of France to preserve that precious commodity called liberty during 2 world wars? We gather here this evening to pay homage to that remarkable friendship that is so gloriously represented by the statue that stands out in the harbor. At the original dedication ceremonies held 100 years ago, President Grover Cleveland said, "We will not forget that liberty has made here her home, nor shall her chosen altar be neglected. A stream of light shall pierce the darkness of ignorance and man's oppression until liberty enlightens the world." And Edward de la Bellay, the French senator and scholar who first conceived the idea for the Statue of Liberty, wrote these words over a century ago. "This Statue of Liberty will preserve among future generations, like a sacred tradition, the eternal friendship of the United States and France." And now it is my pleasure to introduce one of France's outstanding entertainers, who will be joined by a gentleman whose voice has been deemed by President Reagan to be a national treasure. Together they will sing a musical tribute to the vision and the ideals that made the Statue of Liberty possible. Please welcome MEESE and Andy Williams.
For many years we've stood as one.
Pour la construire il y a 100 ans.
Stood side by side and hand in hand.
La liberté sur l'Atlantique.
Now we can see how far we've come.
Défie le temps.
And where we stand.
C'était un cadeau de Marianne.
100 years ago she came.
La statue Martin d'Eiffel.
A gift of love to shine her light.
Au cœur du monde.
A light of hope.
Au pied.
Forever new.
Des vagues.
Forever bright. Through bad times and sad times, she was there, sweet lady. So many dreams, so many plans.
La haine pourrait l'emporter.
So many visions were conceived.
La liberté est un drapeau.
So many doubted through the years.
Nous rapporter.
So few believe.
La liberté éclaire le monde.
But bit by bit the vision grew. All began to fill, and as a sign of great love, the torch was lit. I praise the brave men
If the Statue of Liberty was the light of hope for millions of immigrants, then Ellis Island was the door of hope. It was the last barrier to entrance into the United States and the first step on the road to citizenship. On Ellis Island, which is undergoing a major refurbishing right now, is a man who would like to tell us more about this historic place. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Robert De Niro.
This is Ellis Island, a very precious piece of real estate, and this is my son, Raphael, a very important part of my life. I'm very happy to be at this historical place at this jubilant time with this particular person because I believe we are all destined to remember this moment for years to come. Every parent wants to pass on to his children the things he believes are important, and what could be more important than being a part of history? A century ago, the Statue of Liberty became the symbol of welcome to immigrants arriving in New York Harbor after a long, hard journey. But they were now coming in such vast numbers that an obstacle to their final landing was created to control the human tidal wave. Called Ellis Island, it would serve as processing center for all those crammed into steerage. Yet the delay couldn't diminish their excitement, their joyous anticipation. They had come too far, had suffered too much poverty or persecution in their homelands to let this formality dampen their desire to forge a better life. Between 1892 and 1954, nearly 17 million men, women, and children passed through Ellis Island. In 1907, a record year, overworked officials processed 3,000 people a day. Despite the speed of the procedures during this tumultuous period, there was just reason for fear and doubt among the stateless foreigners. A prevalent eye disease, trachoma, or tuberculosis, or mental illness, if detected, was cause for detention and possible deportation. Remarkably, this fate befell only a small percent of those who entered Ellis Island. Age-old family names, if found unpronounceable by the American registrar, would be changed, but the worst was over. A railroad ticket office was provided for those who had hope of a job or relatives to join beyond New York. So now the moment drew near when these immigrants from Ireland, from Hungary, Italy, Greece, from virtually every European nation and the Caribbean as well, would be ferried back to Manhattan, their new lives soon to begin. These faces should seem familiar, for they are the faces of the parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents of many of us who are looking at them now. Proud, honest, good faces. The faces of our past, present, and future. The human drama of Ellis Island ended 3 decades ago, but it remains an indelible, haunting part of our heritage. One of the reasons today is so special is because Ellis Island is about to be reborn, if only for a brief moment in time. People have gathered here, as they have in 44 other cities, to prepare for one of the most meaningful moments of their lives. They come to take the oath of citizenship that will make them full-fledged Americans. They are representative of millions who came before them, and each has a story to tell about why and how he came to this moment in time. Some were fleeing from oppression. Some were joining their relatives who were fortunate enough to have arrived earlier. Some came looking for gainful employment, shoemakers and farmers and tailors seeking to ply their trade in an atmosphere of opportunity and respect. And some came with the respect of the world already in their possession, but with a burning desire to dance to a different drummer, to a beat that allowed for growth and freedom of expression. They all harbored dreams of a better life, and sometimes the dreams came true.
The Honorable, the Chief Justice of the United States.
Oyez, oyez, oyez. All persons having business before the Honorable, the Chief Justice of the United States, are admonished to draw near and give their attention. God save the United States and this honorable court.
The court recognizes the Attorney General of the United States. Mr. Attorney General.
Mr. Chief Justice, may it please the court, I stand before you tonight on the eve of the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the Statue of Liberty, our most famous symbol of the hopes and aspirations of millions of people who have chosen to make the United States their home. Many of America's most honorable men and women have passed before this aisle in pursuit of freedom on our shores. As loyal citizens, they have served this country with distinction. I am confident that the petitioners gathered here and in courtrooms throughout the country will follow admirably in their footsteps. All of the petitioners have met the statutory requirements for citizenship. They are all persons of good moral character and have agreed to uphold the principles of our Constitution and our form of government. Mr. Chief Justice, I therefore recommend that the oath of citizenship be administered to these petitioners.
Your motion is granted, Mr. Attorney General. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, today's ceremony has a very special meaning for me, and one that I share with all of you and with millions of others. My grandfather, whose name I bear, came to these shores about 145 years ago, as millions had done before and have done since. His father was an Austrian, his mother was Swiss. After they settled in the Middle West, a plague left him an orphan at about age 10. In 1861, he joined the Union Army, and his service during that war earned him the Congressional Medal of Honor, the highest military honor our country can bestow. A century and a half later, his descendants manifest why we are rightly called a nation of immigrants. Mrs. Berger and I have two grandchildren who are a mixture of Austrian, Swiss, German, Swedish, English, and Scots. Today we celebrate this great symbol of freedom given to us by the people of France, the people who helped us gain our freedom. That great Lady of Liberty faces not west to our land, but out to the seas as a welcome to those who seek our kind of freedom. Our Constitution is a unique, remarkable instrument. And 200 years ago, it operated to unleash the latent talents and energies and the abilities of every individual who came here, so that each person could develop according to his or her God-given gifts. People were meant to be free. And the great statue that we rededicate today symbolizes not only our freedom, but also the Constitution that guarantees those freedoms and has guaranteed those freedoms for 200 years. It is a symbol not just to the American people, it is a symbol to the people everywhere who want freedom under a system of liberty with order. Now, it is my honor and privilege to ask each of you who seek citizenship to raise your right hand and on this Bible repeat after me. I hereby declare on oath that I renounce all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince or potentate, or state or sovereignty, of which I have heretofore been a subject or citizen, that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the laws of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will bear arms on behalf of the United States when required by law, that I will perform non-combat service in the armed forces of the United States when required by law, that I will perform work of a national importance when required by law, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. So help me God. Now, my fellow citizens, I congratulate you and ask all present here and in the other ceremonies taking place in the United States to recite with me the Pledge of Allegiance, which is as follows. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Honorable Court is now adjourned.
Judge Mark Americus Costantino to return to the podium to close out tonight's ceremony.
How did the Chief Justice say, true citizens of this great country, one thing we must do
At 44 locations across the country, as Chief Justice Berger said, thousands of new American citizens as America opens its arms. Once again, almost one of his last official acts as Chief Justice. He will soon retire to chair the commission to celebrate the bicentennial of the Constitution. We'll be right back.
ABC's presentation of Liberty Weekend.
Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman and executive producer of Liberty Weekend, Mr. David Wolper.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to Liberty Weekend. During the course of the next few days, we will try to impart some sense of the profound and pleasant meaning this statue has for countless American and freedom-loving people everywhere. If we succeed in our task, it will be due in no small part to
to the volunteers and staff of Liberty Weekend, whose generosity of spirit and talent surpassed our fondest hopes. My gratitude to them is matched by my admiration for their enthusiasm and devotion. We hope you will all enjoy Liberty Weekend and participate in all the events that we have planned. Although it's been a tough road to travel at times, getting here this day has made it all worthwhile. Now I have the honor to introduce to you a man who heads the branch of government responsible for keeping the Statue of Liberty as bright and meaningful as she is tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of the Interior, the Honorable Donald Hodel.
Donald Hodel, the Secretary of the Interior, following David Wolper, who has had quite a lot to contend with over this week and has stood up well under it all.
Mr. President and my fellow Americans, welcome to the restored Statue of Liberty, the symbol of freedom and hope for all mankind. The statue has particular relevance to the many immigrants whose first glimpse of America was the sight of that towering cathedral to liberty, that monument to hope, but she is treasured by all Americans. We will preserve our God-given liberty for future generations by remaining strong as a nation, by making plain our determination never to let our freedom slip away, and by being an effective ally to those who seek freedom's blessings. We honor our liberty by preserving its symbols, such as the statue. Under your leadership, Mr. President, there is a renewed sense of pride in America. Lady Liberty no longer is confined to her island, but instead every day her silhouette and her spirit enter our homes and our lives. As a result, the people of America made this private sector, non-governmental restoration effort successful. I want to pay special tribute to Lee Iacocca. He brought to the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation a profound personal commitment. Millions of Americans responded by providing the financial support necessary to enable the torch of liberty to continue to enlighten the world. Lee, the American people join me in expressing our gratitude. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce the chairman of the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation, Lee Iacocca.
Lee Iacocca, something of a folk hero to a great many Americans as a result of his participation in this. We should also tell you, in fairness, that Secretary Hodel, who just paid tribute, fired him from the Centennial Commission some weeks ago, some months ago.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Well, tonight concludes a four-year labor of love. 4 years ago, President Reagan wisely chose to place the job of saving America's most sacred symbol in the hands of the American people themselves. And the people responded from their hearts and from their pocketbooks. I'm proud to announce that just in time for this celebration tonight, we have surpassed our goal of $265 million. Now that's a huge number for a private fundraising effort. But more important than how much is from whom. And the answer to that is from everybody. From millionaires and school kids, from companies and civic groups, from people in Europe and from people behind the Iron Curtain, even from Vietnamese boat people. It came $5 million at a time, and it came 5 cents at a time. To all of you, from all the people who worked on this great project, we say thank you. And now tonight, we pay you back. We relight the torch, but we do more than that. We also restore the flame of liberty. We remember the millions drawn here by that flame, and we renew our commitment to the ideals that kept it burning. It is fitting that the man who will unveil the statue is a man who has contributed so much to the rebirth of the spirit of patriotism in America. He made it fashionable to be a patriot again, and he set the tone for what we do here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my high privilege and honor to introduce the President of the United States and Mrs. Reagan.
Stand standing ovation from the audience as the President gets ready to give us the highlight of the evening, the unveiling of the statue.
We should tell people, Barbara, there are really two moments like this in the evening. The President at this point, along with Mrs. Reagan, will unveil the Statue of Liberty again in a formal way. Later on, he will light the torch.
Thank you, and Lee Iacocca, thank you on behalf of all of America. President, Madame Mitterrand, my fellow Americans, the iron workers from New York and New Jersey who came here to begin restoration work were at first puzzled and a bit put off to see foreign workers, craftsmen from France, arrive. Jean Ouillard, the leader of the French workers, said his countrymen understood. After all, he asked, how would Frenchmen feel if Americans showed up to help restore the Eiffel Tower? But as they came to know each other, these Frenchmen and Americans, affections grew, and so too did perspectives. The Americans were reminded that Miss Liberty, like the many millions she's welcomed to these shores, is of foreign birth, the gift of workers, farmers and shopkeepers and children who donated hundreds of thousands of francs to send her here. They were the ordinary people of France. This statue came from their pockets and from their hearts. The French workers, too, made discoveries. Monsieur Ouillard, for example, normally lives in a 150-year-old cottage in a small French town. But for the last year, he's been riding the subway through Brooklyn. A study in contrasts, he said. Contrasts indeed. But he has also told the newspapers that he and his countrymen learned something else at Liberty Island. For the first time, they worked in proximity with Americans of Jewish, black, Italian, Irish, Russian, Polish, and Indian backgrounds. Fascinating, he said, to see different ethnic and national types work and live so well together. Well, it's how we like to think of America. And it's good to know that Miss Liberty is still giving life to the dream of a new world where old antagonisms could be cast aside and people of every nation could live together as one. It's especially fitting that this lesson should be relived and relearned here by Americans and Frenchmen. President Mitterrand, the French and American people have forged a special friendship over the course of 2 centuries. Yes, in the 1700s, France was the midwife of our liberty. In 2 world wars, America stood with France as she fought for her life and for civilization. And today, Mr. President, with infinite gentleness, your countrymen tend the final resting places, marked now by rows of white crosses and stars, of more than 60,000 Americans who remain on French soil. A reminder since the days of Lafayette of our mutual struggles and sacrifices for freedom. So tonight, as we celebrate the friendship of our 2 nations, we also pray, may it ever be so. God bless America, and vive la France. And yet, my fellow Americans, it is not only the friendship of 2 peoples, but the friendship of all peoples that brings us here tonight. We celebrate something more than the restoration of this statue's physical grandeur. Another worker here, Scott Aronson, a marble restorer, has put it well. I grew up in Brooklyn and never went to the Statue of Liberty. But when I first walked in there to work, I thought about my grandfathers coming through here. And which of us does not think of other grandfathers and grandmothers from so many places around the globe for whom this statue was the first glimpse of America? She was silhouetted very clear. One of them wrote about standing on deck as their ship entered New York Harbor. We passed her very slowly. Of course, we had to look up. She was beautiful. Another talked of how all the passengers rushed to one side of the boat for a fast look at their new home and at her Everybody was crying. The whole boat bent toward her. She was beautiful with the early morning light. To millions returning home, especially from foreign wars, she was also special. A young World War captain of artillery described how on a troop ship returning from France, even the most hard-bitten veteran had trouble blinking back the tears. I've never seen anything that looked so good, that doughboy, Harry Truman, wrote to his fiancée Bess back in Independence, Missouri, as the Liberty Lady in New York Harbor. And that's why tonight we celebrate this mother of exiles who lifts her light beside the golden door. Many of us have seen the picture of another worker here, iron or tool belt around his waist, balanced on a narrow metal rod of scaffolding, leaning over to place a kiss on the forehead of Miss Liberty. Tony Serassi, the grandson of immigrant Italians, said it was something he was proud to do, something to tell my grandchildren. Robert Kearney feels the same way. At work on the statue after a serious illness, he gave $10,000 worth of commemorative pins to those who visited here. Part of the reason, he says, was an earlier construction job over in Hoboken, and his friend named Blackie. They could see the harbor from the building where they were working on, and every morning, Blackie would look over the water, give a salute, and say, "That's my gal." Well, the truth is, she's everybody's gal. We sometimes forget that even those who came here first to settle the new land were also strangers. I've spoken before of the tiny Arabella, a ship at anchor just off the Massachusetts coast. A little group of Puritans huddled on the deck. And then John Winthrop, who would later become the first governor of Massachusetts, reminded his fellow Puritans there on that tiny deck that they must keep faith with their God, that the eyes of all the world were upon them, and that they must not forsake the mission that God had sent them on, and they must be a light unto the nations of all the world, a shining city upon a hill. Call it mysticism, if you will. I have always believed there was some divine providence that placed this great land here between the two great oceans to be found by a special kind of people from every corner of the world who had a special love for freedom and a special courage that enabled them to leave their own land, leave their friends and their countrymen, and come to this new and strange land to build a new world of peace and freedom and hope. Lincoln spoke about hope as he left the hometown he would never see again to take up the duties of the presidency and bring America through a terrible civil war. At each stop on his long train ride to Washington, the news grew worse. The nation was dividing. His own life was in peril. On he pushed, undaunted. In Philadelphia, he spoke in Independence Hall, where 85 years earlier, the Declaration of Independence had been signed. He noted that much more had been achieved there than just independence from Great Britain. It was, he said, hope to the world, future for all time. Well, that is the common thread that binds us to those Quakers on the tiny deck of the Arabella, to the beleaguered farmers and landowners signing the Declaration in Philadelphia, in that hot Philadelphia hall, to Lincoln on a train, ready to guide us people through the conflagration, to all the millions crowded in the steerage who passed this lady and wept at the sight of her, and those who've worked here in the scaffolding with their hands and with their love. Jean Weir, Scott Aronson, Tony Serassi, Robert Kearney, and so many others. We're bound together because, like them, we too dare to hope. Hope that our children will always find here the land of liberty in a land that is free. We dare to hope, too, that we'll understand our work can never be truly done until every man, woman, and child shares in our gift, in our hope, and stands with us in the light of liberty, a light that tonight will shortly cast its glow upon her as it has upon us for 2 centuries, keeping faith with the dream of long ago and guiding millions still to a future of peace and freedom. And now we will unveil that gallant lady. Thank you, and God bless you all. Nancy?
Around New York Harbor, people on their feet, clearly agreeing with President Truman, who wrote to his wife, "I've never seen anything that looked so good." Symbol of a nation, symbol of an idea. That is the unveiling of the Statue of Liberty, and later this evening, President Reagan will return to the podium to light the torch.
Harbor, ABC's exclusive coverage will continue.
This is Peter Jennings in New York Harbor, and that is what they mean in part when they refer to the Statue of Liberty as a light enlightening the world. She stands there now, rededicated by President Reagan, and we rejoin opening ceremonies.
Performed by the Liberty Orchestra, conducted by the musical director of opening ceremonies, Mr. Ian Fraser. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Shirley MacLaine.
They heard about it in many languages. They read about it in many books. They dreamt about it on many a cold and fearful night, many a dark and dismal day. They knew someone who had gone there, and they knew that one day they would go there too. So they packed what meager possessions they could carry, leaving behind familiar friends, surroundings, and homes. They bid farewell to all that was sure and predictable. And with a prayer on their lips and a vision in their hearts, they came. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Neil Diamond.
Far, we've been traveling far, without a home, but not without a star. To be free, we huddle close, hang on to that dream.
summer place. They coming to America, never looking back again. They coming to America. Oh, don't it seem so far away? But we're traveling light today in the eye of the storm. In the eye of the storm. Oh, to a new and a shiny place. Make our bed and we'll say our grace. Freedom's light burning warm. Freedom's light burning warm. Everywhere around the world, they coming to America. Every time that flag's unfurled, they coming to America. Got a dream to take them there. They coming to America. Got a dream they come to share. They coming to America. 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 Today, yes. Today, yes. Today, yes. Today, yes.
They came in waves. They came in droves. They came crowded together in steerage, in ships that creaked and crawled across the vast ocean. They came with very little money, very few provisions, very, very mixed emotions. They came prepared to work, to struggle, to endure any hardship in order to share in the promise of this promised land. They came with the name of a distant relative scribbled on a precious piece of paper. Distant relatives who lived in exotic-sounding places like Oshkosh, Minneapolis, Chattanooga, Brooklyn. But with a prayer on their lips and a vision in their hearts, they came. And during the long and harsh voyage to a new beginning, old fears, old hurts, Old injustices would drift to the surface and shatter their restless sleep. Pogroms and potato famines and persecutions, bullies and book burners, Cossacks and forced conscriptions, churches closed, schools closed, doors closed. But ahead lay the future, open to all possibilities. And the key to the future in this new land was one deliciously simple word, one remarkably simple idea that sparked the human imagination like a torch. And the word was freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Larry Gatlin.
Freedom ain't a state like Maine or Virginia. Freedom ain't across some county line. Freedom is a flame that burns within you. Freedom's in the state of mind. Freedom, 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 freedom. Freedom is a flame that burns within you. Freedom's in the state of mind. Ba 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 ba. Freedom ain't a boat that's leaving without you. Freedom ain't a place you float to find. Freedom is how you think about you. Freedom's in the state of mind. Freedom, 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 freedom. Freedom is how you think about you. Freedom's in the state of mind. You can't get to freedom by riding on a train. The only way to freedom is right onto your brain. Whoa, 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 whoa. Freedom is an ocean sweeping the nation. Freedom is the right of all mankind. Freedom is a body's imagination. Freedom's in the state of mind. Freedom, 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 freedom. Freedom is a full-time occupation. Freedom's in the state of mind.
Freedom, freedom and liberty. Through the mist from the rail of a ship, they saw her standing there like a beacon in the night. Through the mist, without fail every trip, they saw her standing there by the dawn's early light. And every man, every woman, every child, no matter what age, what ethnic background, what country, took a deep breath and peered out into the future, knowing full well that this would be a moment they would record on their hearts and their minds forever. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jose Feliciano and Diane Shure.
clouded sky. Hand in hand, we will stand united. We should fall if we divide. In our land filled with milk and honey, we extol humanity. From the sands of our blue wave beaches, we extend hands across the sea. Long may the land be filled with the love, yeah, in America. Lord, in America. In America, yeah, yeah. We found us a home. Yeah, 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 yeah. In America, I love you, America, America. You've been so good to me. In America, we found a home. We found a
And once they settled into this new world, they wrote home to others. They wrote of tales of difficult adjustments, altered expectations, but mostly they wrote of opportunities realized and freedom of expression and a better life for their children. And as a result, the ones who had remained in the old country, too timid or too rigid or too fearful to risk everything in the name of freedom, were inspired to take the chance, take it themselves and make the change. And with a prayer on their lips and a vision in their heart, they came. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Debbie Allen. To be in America, that was the dream. To add their singular flavor, their heritage to others that had come before them and who would come after them. So with a prayer on their lips and a vision in their hearts, they came.
Everywhere around the world, they come into America. Every time that flag's unfurled, they come into America. Got a dream to take them there. They come into America. Got a dream they come to share. They come into America. 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 Today, yes. Today, yes. Today, yes. Today, yes. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of the ice chain, of the ice sea. Today, today, yes. Today,
From a helicopter, high above New York Harbor, the lady, and in the background, the twin towers of the Trade Center, and lower Manhattan. What do people think of her? You've heard 1,000 words already tonight. Victor Hugo said in Paris 100 years ago, "Form is nothing without spirit. With the idea, it is everything." Here on the edge of New York Harbor, we're freezing. It's a wonderful show. But you at home, I can assure you, are a good deal warmer than everybody here. In the crowd here, they've wrapped themselves in the cushions on which they were meant to sit.
Listen, freedom is supposed to keep you warm, but there's a lot that's coming up that will be exciting and make the blood move a little bit. Medal of Liberty winners are going to have their medals presented by President Reagan. BARYSHNIKOV will dance for the first time as an American citizen. The President will light the torch of the Statue of Liberty. Isn't that warming you up?
Mikhail BARYSHNIKOV is presently, I think, probably on a boat coming across the harbor, cold in the middle of the harbor. We're very glad you're with us, and as Barbara says, there's a good deal more to come to celebrate the rededication, the 100th anniversary of the Statue of Liberty. But as you have heard, embodied in all this quintessential American entertainment tonight, we do think it's a terrific show. an American idea. The Statue of Liberty, the torch, soon to be relit.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ted Koppel.
Ted Koppel, our colleague, naturalized American as
He came to
well.
America from Germany with his family in 1938, fleeing from the Nazi persecution. In America, he served in the military, earned a doctorate, and taught government at Harvard before joining the administration in 1969 as National Security Advisor. Advocating a flexible foreign policy, he was involved in the renewal of relations with China, the SALT talks, and the formation of a Mideast policy. In 1973, he became the first foreign-born citizen to be appointed Secretary of State, and his efforts to resolve the Vietnam conflict earned him the Nobel Peace Prize. Tonight, he adds another laurel to his distinguished collection as the Medal of Liberty is awarded to Dr. Henry Kissinger.
Dr. Kissinger received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1973 and the Medal of Freedom in 1977. This is another honor for him.
Born in Costa Rica 35 years ago, he is the youngest of our honorees. He came to America at 18 and worked his way through college, earning a PhD in physics from MIT. Picked in a group of 19 out of 3,000 applicants, Dr. Franklin Chang Diaz was selected to become an astronaut in 1980, the first naturalized American to be so honored. On December 18th, 1985, he became part of the team that was successfully launched into space in the shuttle Columbia. A researcher and designer, his accomplishments so far have earned him an honored place among the distinguished roster of Medal of Liberty recipients. A man of courage and vision, the Medal of Liberty is awarded tonight to Dr. Franklin Chang Diaz.
Dr. Chang Diaz flew on the last flight of the shuttle. He's very simple when talking about the United States. He says simply, I have a lot of respect for this society.
When IMP came to America from China in 1935 to study, he expected to return there as a civil engineer. But at MIT, he found himself drawn to the actual creation of buildings, and he became an architect. Today, at age 69, he is one of the most acclaimed international architects, having designed many of the most dazzling and graceful structures in the world. Among them is the newly completed Jacob Javits Convention Center here in New York, and the work in progress at the Louvre Museum in Paris. For his skill at bringing form and beauty into the world in such abundance, the Medal of Liberty is awarded to IMP.
IMP feels, as do many immigrants, the pull of his homeland. He says, my roots are Chinese and the pull of China on me is very great. But whenever I return here, I feel I'm coming home.
One of two Chinese to receive the Medal of Liberty tonight.
He showed signs of great musical ability at a tender age, and an attack of polio when he was 4 did nothing to diminish his gift. His parents brought him to America from Israel to continue his violin studies, and he has since carved out a remarkable career, not only as a virtuoso, but also as an able and vociferous spokesman for the disabled. A world-class artist who has brought music and inspiration to the world, the Medal of Liberty is awarded tonight to ITZHAK PERLMAN.
When Barbara talked to ITZHAK PERLMAN the other day, they talked about his first appearance in America on the Ed Sullivan Show. For those of you who remember it, he's picked up every American habit possible. He's a great poker player. He loves basketball and baseball.
He was only 13 when he appeared in the Ed Sullivan Show, Peter.
Born in Scotland, his parents ventured forth to the New World, where their son James had an opportunity to pursue an education and to become a journalist. In 1939, he became the London correspondent for the New York Times, and during his years as chief of the Washington Bureau, he played a major role in shaping the Times' editorial policy. This had great influence on public officials and public opinion as well. A 2-time Pulitzer Prize winner, James Reston, is honored tonight with this new symbol of achievement. The Medal of Liberty is awarded to James Scotty Reston.
so very strongly about individual independence. He says everybody in this country has got his own Declaration of Independence. We're in danger of giving the jolly old notion, as he puts it, a bad name. James Scotty Reston. A child, as that couple said when he first came from Scotland.
Born in the Panama Canal Zone of Jamaican parents, Kenneth Clark immigrated to New York's Harlem in 1919. Obtaining a doctorate in psychology in 1940, he went on to do important work in the field of mental health and sociology, being cited as an important contributing factor in the Supreme Court declaration that segregation in the public schools because of race is unconstitutional. At 74, Dr. Clark is still an active force in civil rights and educational reform. The Medal of Liberty is proudly awarded to Dr. Kenneth Clark.
Dr. Clark has said that his wife said his greatest attribute was his persistence. And he feels today that the greatest threat to freedom is the shortness of memory of human beings. He has not forgotten.
The family of Albert Sabin fled the religious persecution of Russia in 1921, settling in New Jersey. Albert worked his way through medical school and pursued an interest in virology, eventually developing an oral vaccine for the prevention of polio. His work was one of the main contributing factors to the eradication of that deadly disease around the world. At 80, he still actively crusades for causes that benefit mankind. The Medal of Liberty is awarded tonight to Dr. Albert Sabin.
Dr. Sabin probably speaks for a great many of us who were not born in this country. He says, because I was born somewhere else, this country perhaps means even more to me than someone born here. I always want the U.S. to be right.
Coming from Shanghai in 1945, An Wang began a career in the new field of computers. His innovative mind and business acumen helped make possible a revolution in that area. In addition to being actively involved in his multi-billion-dollar company, he still finds the time to pursue his love of invention and to be active in numerous community and charitable projects. The Medal of Liberty is awarded to the multifaceted Dr. An Wang.
And how right he is when he says sometimes we take this right for granted. But throughout the world, he adds, as we've seen today, millions yearn for the right to shape their own destiny.
Elie Wiesel was born in Romania, and as a boy he lost both parents and a sister in the concentration camps. When the Americans liberated Buchenwald in 1945, they found the 14-year-old boy who had cheated death. He vowed to dedicate himself to bearing witness to what had happened during the Holocaust in the hope of preventing that dark history from ever being repeated. He has become, through his writings and teachings, the foremost voice of warning and remembrance. The Medal of Liberty is awarded to Elie Wiesel.
And speaking of warning and remembrance, many of us heard Elie Wiesel perhaps for the first time when he protested the president's visit to Vicksburg this past week.
Dedicated and very often a somber man, Barbara, to whom I returned last year to Auschwitz. I went back with him. Very moving.
Born in England in 1903, he was 4 years old when his family immigrated to Cleveland, Ohio. Having the gift of gab, he pursued a career in show business, mastering every medium with his deft timing, rapid-fire delivery, and topical humor. Through war and peace, he has entertained millions of servicemen, which was just his way of saying thanks to this nation of immigrants, of which he is one. For years of laughter and good cheer, the Medal of Liberty is awarded to Bob Hope.
Bob Hope, 83 years old and still going strong. And I should tell you, as a member of the committee who made the selections, that he was the #1 unanimous choice of everyone on the committee.
And he never misses an opportunity, even in the Statue of Liberty, he says. I knew she was in trouble when I waved at her, and she waved back.
When Hannah Holborn Gray was 4 years old, her father was dismissed from his teaching position in Heidelberg for opposing the Nazi Party. He moved to New Haven, Connecticut, where Hannah pursued her education, becoming the first female provost at Yale University, and eventually being chosen in 1979 to be the first woman president of the University of Chicago. The Medal of Liberty is awarded to this outstanding educator, Hannah Holborn Gray.
can all sympathize in one respect with Dr. Gray. She says that living in the USA is such a rewarding experience, it's impossible to pinpoint any single aspect as being the best.
She is the only woman on the list of the Medal of Liberty winners.
Our final honoree at 98 is also our eldest. He is unable to be with us tonight, but his story is an inspiration to us all. His parents escaped from their ravished Russian village and landed in America when he was 5. His name was Israel Belin at the time, and with little formal education, his one-of-a-kind genius flourished here and brought a special joy to the world.
An exciting, if poverty-filled childhood awaited Irving Berlin in New York's Lower East Side. Begging pennies as a street singer, then struggling as a songwriter in Tin Pan Alley, music was to become his life.
Here, take this. It's music, brand new, just come from New York.
Come on and hear Alexander's ragtime band.
His first big hit did happen like in the movies. 1 million copies were sold of the song that changed the direction of American popular music. Irving Berlin, at 23, was on his way. In nearly 1,000 songs, American in flavor, international in appeal, Irving Berlin has left no emotion untouched, patriotic or romantic. And no holiday season has escaped his magical musical signature.
In your Easter bonnet, with all the frills upon it.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas.
Often donating the royalties of his hits to charities, the Boy and Girl Scouts are beneficiaries of what has been called our second national anthem.
From the mountains to the prairie.
Irving Berlin is unable to be with us tonight personally, but we are most grateful to have this legacy of the man and his music.
God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Justly proud of all the native-born citizens who have made significant and lasting contributions to the art and science and culture of our world. But on this night in particular, attention must be paid to those naturalized citizens whose gifts were of the kind that continue to give long after the giver has left us. The accomplishments are impressive, the list is long. They loved their adopted country and drew strength and inspiration from its rhythm. One who came from Russia with a gift for the art of dance was named George Balanchine. He became a citizen in 1933 and was the founder and guiding force
of the School of American Ballet. During the 30s, he met another George who impressed him with his creativity in composition. His name was George Gershwin. Mr. Balanchine was so enamored of Mr. Gershwin's work that he fashioned a ballet using his popular songs for the score. Many years later, another Russian emigre met up with Mr. Balanchine and studied with him and danced for him and eventually became the director of the American Ballet School. It is fitting that his first performance as a citizen of the United States should be to a piece of American music choreographed by Balanchine. Here to dance a pas de deux with Leslie Brown to the music of Gershwin. Ladies and gentlemen, MIKHAIL BARYSHNIKOV.
MIKHAIL BARYSHNIKOV, who defected while he was in Canada, came to this country 12 years ago, a citizen tonight.
Taylor.
Any celebration that encompasses a period of 100 years will inevitably touch moments of proud accomplishments as well as times of fear and trepidation. At one point in our recent history, those two extremes occurred simultaneously, affecting all Americans. It happened during the early 40s. The threat of war had become a frightening reality, and the country was mobilized as never before to meet the awesome challenge. For many in the armed forces, the last sight they saw of the USA on their way to the battlefields of Europe was the lady in the harbor, her torch held high. It was also the first thing they saw upon their victorious return. The Statue of Liberty symbolized the essence of our national values. Her likeness was emblazoned on war bonds, posters, billboards, and movie screens to remind us all what we were fighting to preserve. In 1942, a short film was shown in movie houses across the country. It was dropped in amongst the double feature, the coming attractions, the serial, the newsreel, the cartoon, but it still managed to make such an impact. It took on a life of its own. It was called The House I Live In. Today, the message still sounds fresh and vital. And the man who first introduced this song is, if anything, even more dedicated to the American dream than ever. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Frank Sinatra.
Mr. President, Nancy. President Mitterrand, Madame Mitterrand. Ladies and gentlemen. It's difficult for me to try to explain to you what I feel in my heart at this very moment, because I stand here in the presence of the lady we honor today and the beauty of her torch, who smiled on my father, Martin Anthony Sinatra. And I'm proud to say his name. And I imagine running down the gangplank when he arrived must have been quite a thrill for him when he took his first step into liberty's soil and into freedom's soul. That shrine of hopes and dreams, that body of land surrounded by love called Ellis Island, which means welcome in any language. Marty, God rest him, was one of those 12 million of the world's tired, poor, huddled masses yearning to breathe free, who honor those hallowed halls, who enlarged and enriched the American family by sharing with the new friends their Michelangelos and their Meister singers, their Holy Lands and their marching bands, their rice and roots, tillers and toilers, philosophers and farmers, their common and most uncommon poets and peasants who braved the ocean waves in their pilgrimage of proof that our days are better than anyone else's yesterdays, that our todays are better than anyone else's yesterdays, that America's tomorrows beat everything in sight. Here, in this blessed country without walls, here, in the house I live in. What is America to me? A name, a map, or a flag I see. A certain word, democracy. What is America to me? The house I live in, a plot of earth, a street, the grocer and the butcher, and the people that I meet, the children in the playground, the faces that I see. And religions, that's America to me. The place I work in, the worker by my side, that little town or city where my people lived and died. The howdy and the handshake, the air of feeling free, and the right to speak my mind out. That's America to me. The things I see about me, the big things and the small, the little corner newsstand and that house a mile tall. The wedding and the churchyard, the laughter and the tears, and the dream that's been a-growing for more than 200 years. The town I live in, the street, the house, the room, the pavement of the city, or a garden all in bloom. The school, the church, the clubhouse, the million lights I see, but especially the people. That's America to me.
Frank Sinatra, The House I Live In. When we come back, President Reagan will relight Liberty's torch.
Ladies and gentlemen, the president...
It looks like it's going to be a great day for flying, Grandpa.
Is that you, Mommy?
Cut. That's a wrap.
How I miss these roads that lead back home. Though it's just a few short miles, my baby's smile just around the bend.
We have spent far too much time apart. Tonight, let's stay right where we are, not stray too far from a familiar friend. You love me, now I know. Being here, being home, we belong together.
which had to do really with the weather. We told you it was cold and windy. What is happening on stage now, and the crowd is applauding, is a tribute to Operation International Naval Review, which is going to happen tomorrow. But because the weather is so bad outside the harbor, that many of the captains were not able to get here from Sandy Hook, where they're berthing overnight. And so that's the delay, and here now is the finale.
Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman of Operation Sail 1986, the Honorable Emil Mosbacher, Jr.
The America's Cup races. Buzz Mosbacher, two-time winner of the American Cup races.
President Reagan, Mrs. Reagan, President Mitterrand, Madame Mitterrand, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure and privilege for me to honor the captains who have brought their magnificent vessels many thousands of miles from all corners of the globe to join with us in our salute to liberty. To these seafaring gentlemen, we extend our warm thanks and deep appreciation. It is our fervent hope that this convocation of the world's greatest ships will bring us at least a league closer to the international goodwill and peace which we pray is on the horizon. And now it is my great privilege to introduce to you an old friend, a fellow sailor, a great American, the Secretary of the United States Navy, the Honorable John Lehman.
Thank you, Buzz. In addition to the tall ships that are gracing our celebration this weekend, we also have naval vessels representing 29 countries from around the globe. There has always been a spirit of camaraderie amongst naval personnel, a mutual respect and love of the sea that transcends borders and government. It is our hope that our foreign visitors will take with them when they leave fond memories of this historic occasion. I know they will take with them the gratitude and affection of the American people for adding their good wishes to those of freedom-loving people everywhere. Sailors have always navigated by the use of bright objects in the sky. And once again, there is a shining torch in our sky to guide them to a safe harbor. It is the torch of the Statue of Liberty. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, to rekindle the torch of the Statue of Liberty, the President of the United States.
While we applaud those immigrants who stand out, whose contributions are easily discerned, we know that America's heroes are also those whose names are remembered by only a few. Many of them passed through this harbor, went by this lady, looked up at her torch, which we light tonight in their honor. They were the men and women who labored all their lives so that their children would be well fed, clothed, and educated. The families that went through great hardship yet kept their honor, their dignity, and their faith in God. They passed on to their children those values that define civilization and are the prerequisites of human progress. They worked in our factories, on ships and railroads, in stores, and on road construction crews. They were teachers, lumberjacks, seamstresses, and journalists. They came from every land. What was it that tied these profoundly different people together? What was it that made them not a gathering of individuals, but a nation? That bond that held them together as it holds us together tonight, that bond that has stood every test and travail, is found deep in our national consciousness, an abiding love of liberty. For love of liberty, our forebears, colonists, few in number and with little to defend themselves, fought a war for independence with what was then the world's most powerful empire. For love of liberty, those who came before us tamed a vast wilderness and braved hardships which at times were beyond the limits of human endurance. For love of liberty, a bloody and heart-wrenching civil war was fought. And for love of liberty, Americans championed and still champion, even in times of peril, the cause of human freedom in far-off lands. The God who gave us life, Thomas Jefferson once proclaimed, gave us liberty at the same time. But like all of God's precious gifts, liberty must never be taken for granted. Tonight, we thank God for the many blessings he has bestowed on our land. We affirm our faithfulness in his rule and to our own ideals, and we pledge to keep all alive the dream that brought our forefathers and mothers to this brave new land. On this theme, the poet Emmett Lazarus, moved by this unique symbol of the love of liberty, wrote a very special dedication 100 years ago. The last few lines are ones we know so well. Set to the music of Irving Berlin, they take on tonight a special meaning. We are the keepers of the flame of liberty. We hold it high tonight for the world to see, a beacon of hope, a light unto the nations. And so, with joy and celebration, and with a prayer that this lamp shall never be extinguished, I ask that you all join me in this symbolic act of faith, this lighting of Miss Liberty's torch.
People here have instinctively risen to their feet.
These are fireworks, but not the fireworks that you've been hearing about. Those, the Big Bang is what you'll see tomorrow night. These fireworks put on by a French company who's been manufacturing fireworks since the time of Napoleon. The French and the Americans together in their celebration.
She had a broken nose, a cracked right eye, a split lip, stains on her gown. Now, more than anything else, she's got a brand new torch. She lights the way again.
say, thank God they did.
Well, tonight certainly tells it like it is. America wears its heart and its patriotism on its sleeve for all the world to see. And that is only Act One. We have a full weekend ahead of us tomorrow. We begin with Operation Sail, the International Naval Review. President Reagan, who has sat there all night without a coat on, will be joined by French President Mitterrand on board the USS Iowa down the Hudson River to review the International Naval Armada and the tall ships. Barbara?
And then there's going to be a concert tomorrow night. The Boston Pops, Barry Manilow, Whitney Houston, Joel Gray, wonderful concert. And then the biggest fireworks display. You ain't seen nothing yet if you thought this was big. And I hope it didn't sound as if Americans are glad just that my parents and grandparents came here. I was really speaking for all of us who are citizens now and came here as immigrants.
Barbara, I don't think you should be the slightest bit embarrassed. I think tonight we're all immigrants. For Barbara and for all the people at ABC News, thank you for joining us. We hope you'll be with us. Have a happy 4th of July. I'm Peter Jennings. Good night.
With the sound of the Liberty Marching Band under the direction of Dr. Art Bartner filling the night air, we thank you all for sharing these opening ceremonies with us this evening. Good night, and remember to keep liberty forever in your hearts. This is Mandel Kramer speaking.
ABC's presentation of Liberty Weekend has been brought to you by United States Liberty Coins. Keep Liberty in mint condition with United States Liberty Coins. Texaco, high-octane super unleaded with detergent to help clean out clogged fuel injectors. The Stroh Brewery Company, proud to be a founding sponsor of the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation. And Kmart, the saving place. We're proud to say you've made us America's favorite store. Hotel accommodations provided by the New York Marriott Marquis, New York's newest landmark hotel, featuring the world's tallest atrium. Air transportation for Liberty Weekend provided by American Airlines. This has been a presentation of ABC News.